Greetings. My name is Nowrojee, and I'm a proud member of the 2020 cohort of the WomenLift Health Leadership Journey. I'm here today to talk about my leadership project. In my capacity as Executive Director of the 3D Program for Girls and Women, my leadership project was to design and oversee the transfer of ownership of the 3D program from our US-based operations and team to our partners in Maharashtra, India. From 2017 to 2021, the 3D program advanced gender equality by helping local governments work with civil society and the private sector, and by strengthening women's collectives and platforms to hold government accountable. In 2020, we decided to close our US-based operations and transfer ownership of the program to our partners in India. There were several factors behind that decision. The first, not surprisingly, was COVID-19, which disrupted our operations and programs and our funding. The social justice movements of 2020 forced us to think intentionally about our role as a US-based team and what it might mean to take us off the budget and off operations. And finally, the nature of our partnerships, which were full of trust and goodwill, enabled us to have honest discussions with each other and with our partners, and confirmed our decision to transfer ownership of the program to the partners in India. As Executive Director leading this transition, I designed a three-phase process. The first phase involved buy-in and strategy and really thinking through and assessing our partnerships, our resources, and what was needed to move forward. Phase 2 was about planning and action, specifically coming up with strategic plans with each partner who would move forward with the program, coming up with a fundraising plan, and also beginning to think about our roles on the DC team and what might come next for us. And the final phase, completion and reflection, involved continuing to support our partners in India as they moved forward, but also documenting and sharing lessons learned, and also working to support each other on the DC team to secure our next positions. And finally, closing our DC operations. Out of this process, I have some reflections I'd like to share. The first are reflections on responsible transitions. At first, we focused primarily on programmatic and operational components of the transition, but we realized very soon that we needed to pay attention to the emotional processes. We needed to allow ourselves and our partners the time to both celebrate the achievements of the program and to grieve its closing and the changes that were to come. There were also economic consequences to these kinds of transitions. We reallocated all the resources that we could to our partners to enable them to plan for the transition and ramp up for it. And the DC team supported each other to help us find other positions. Some reflections on global health and international development. Based on our experience with the 3D program, it became clear that we were not operating in the simple North versus South dichotomy that many of the conversations around decolonization relied on. We found inequality manifests everywhere. Systems were failing everywhere, particularly in response to COVID, and movements for social justice, whether in the US or in India, are supporting each other across borders and regions. More personally, some of us exist in the spaces in between. We're neither from the North nor the South. We bring knowledge, perspectives, and expertise from multiple places that is already changing the field. Finally, rather than an us versus them model, global health and international development would benefit from a sharing lessons learned model. And movements for social justice, particularly feminist movements, are leading the way in this approach, growing and supporting each other across borders, regions, generations, and issues, revealing the futility of simple binary approaches to both identity and advocacy. And finally, some reflections on leadership. This year was challenging for those of us who were in leadership positions, but it also opened up opportunities to work differently, more intentionally, and envision a different way forward. My key takeaway is that you can't do it alone. Partnerships are critical. So a huge thank you to my 3D team, to our precious partners in India, to WomenLift Health, and my sisters in the wonderful 2020 cohort who took me through, who were along with this journey with me through this transition, enabling me to implement it intentionally and successfully. And finally, I come away knowing that every ending is a beginning. I'm grateful for the past year and a half, and I'm looking forward to what comes next. Thank you, WomenLift Health.